Matthew chapter 16. And having come, the Pharisees and Sadducees, putting him to the test, demanded that he furnish them for their observation an attesting miracle having its source in heaven. But he, answering, said to them, Evening having come, you are accustomed to say, Fair weather, for the sky is reddening, and in the morning, Today, stormy, for the sky is reddening and is becoming covered with clouds. You possess, indeed, an understanding based upon experience, to pass a discriminating judgment upon the face of the sky. But on the other hand, with reference to the attesting miracles of the epochal strategic periods of time, are you not able to pass a discriminating judgment? A pernicious and adulterous breed of men is constantly craving an attesting miracle, and an attesting miracle shall not be given it except the attesting miracle of Jonah. And having left them, he went off. And the disciples, having come to the other side, completely forgot to take loaves of bread. And Jesus said to them, Be taking heed to, and be guarding yourselves against the yeast of the Pharisees and Sadducees. And they were reasoning among themselves, saying, It is because we did not take loaves of bread. And Jesus, having come to know this, said, Why are you reasoning among yourselves, you of little faith? Is it because you do not have loaves of bread? Are you not yet understanding, nor even remembering the 5 loaves of the 5,000, and how many baskets you took away? Nor even the 7 loaves of the 4,000, and how many baskets you took away? How is it that you are not understanding that I did not speak to you concerning loaves of bread? But be guarding yourselves against the yeast of the Pharisees and Sadducees. Then they understood that he did not speak regarding the guarding of oneself against the yeast that pertained to loaves of bread, but against the teaching of the Pharisees and Sadducees. Now Jesus, having come to the districts adjacent to Caesarea Philippi, was asking his disciples, saying, Who do men say that the Son of Man is? And they said, Some indeed John the Baptizer, but others Elijah, and still others Jeremiah or one of the prophets. He says to them, But as for you, who do you say that I am? And answering, Simon Peter said, As for you, you are the Christ, the Son of God, the living God. And answering, Jesus said to him, Spiritually prosperous are you, Simon Bar-Jonah, because flesh and blood did not reveal this to you, but my Father who is in heaven. Moreover, as for myself, I also am saying to you, you are rock, Petros. And upon this massive rock, Petra, I will build my church. And the counsels of the unseen world shall not overpower it. I shall give to you the keys of the kingdom of heaven, and whatever you bind on earth, forbid to be done, shall have been already bound, forbidden to be done in heaven. And whatever you loose on earth, permit to be done, shall have already been loosed in heaven, permitted to be done. Then he admonished the disciples sharply that they should not tell even one person that he himself is the Christ. From that time on, Jesus began to be showing his disciples that it was a necessity in the nature of the case for him to go off to Jerusalem and to suffer many things from the elders and the chief priests and the men learned in the scriptures, and to be killed, and on the 3rd day to be raised up. And having taken him to himself, apart privately, Peter began to be rebuking him, saying, May mercy be shown to you, Lord. This shall positively not be to you. And having turned around, he, with his back turned to Peter and Satan, said to Peter, Be gone under my authority, and keep on going behind me, out of my sight, Satan. A stumbling block you are to me, because you do not have a mind for the things of God, but for the things of men. Then Jesus said to the disciples, If anyone is desiring to come after me, let him forget self and lose sight of his own interests, and let him pick up his cross and carry it, and let him be taking the same road with me that I travel. For whoever is desiring to save his soul life shall ruin it, but whoever will pass a sentence of death upon his soul life for my sake shall find it. For what will a man be profited if he gain the whole world but forfeit his soul life? Or what shall a man give as an exchange for his soul life? For the Son of Man is about to be coming in the glory of his Father with the angels, and then he shall recompense to each one according to his manner of acting. Assuredly, I am saying to you, there are certain ones of those standing here who are of such a nature that they shall not experience death until such a time as they see the Son of Man coming in his kingdom." And after 6 days, Jesus takes with himself Peter and James and John, his brother, and he brings them up into a mountain, a lofty one, in private. And the manner of his outward expression was changed before them, that expression coming from and being representative of his inner being. And his face took on a different appearance, so that it shone like the sun, and his outer garments became white like its light. And behold, there appeared to them Moses and Elijah talking with him. And Peter, volunteering his judgment, said to Jesus, "Lord, it is an excellent thing for us to be here. On the assumption that you are desiring it, I will make here 3 booths of leafy branches, for you one, and for Moses one, and for Elijah one." While he was still speaking, behold, a cloud composed of light enveloped them with brightness. And behold, there came a voice out of the cloud, saying, "This is my Son, the beloved, in whom I take pleasure. Be hearing him." And the disciples, having heard, fell abruptly upon their face and were exceedingly afraid. And Jesus came, and having touched them, said, "Arise at once, and stop being afraid." And having lifted up their eyes, they saw not even one person except Jesus himself only. And while they were coming down out of the mountain, Jesus commanded them, saying, "To not even one person tell the spectacle until the Son of Man is raised out from among those who are dead." And his disciples asked him, saying, "Why then do those learned in the sacred scriptures say that it is a necessity in the nature of the case for Elijah to come first?" And he, answering them, said, "Elijah indeed comes, and will restore all things to their former state. Moreover, I am telling you, Elijah already came, and they did not recognize him. But they did to him as many things as they desired. In the same manner also the Son of Man is about to be suffering at their hands." Then the disciples understood that concerning John the Baptizer he spoke to them. And after they had come to the crowd, a man came to him, falling upon his knees before him, and saying, "Sir, have mercy upon my son, because he is an epileptic, and he is in a miserable condition. For often he falls into the fire, and often into the water. And I brought him to your disciples, and they were not able to heal him." And Jesus, answering, said, "O unbelieving breed of men, and men who have been morally distorted and twisted, how long shall I be with you? How long will I bear with you? Be bringing him to me here." And Jesus rebuked him, and there came out of him the demon, and the boy was healed from that hour. Then the disciples, having come to Jesus in private, said, "As for us, why were we not able to eject it?" And he says to them, "Because of the littleness of your faith. For assuredly I am saying to you, if you are having faith as a grain of mustard seed, you will say to this mountain, 'Remove hence to that place,' and it shall remove. And not even one thing will be impossible to you." Now while they were assembling in Galilee, Jesus said to them, "The Son of Man is about to be betrayed into men's hands, and they will kill him. And on the 3rd day he will be raised up." And they grieved exceedingly. And after they had come to Capernaum, those who received the half-shekel temple tax came to Peter and said, "Your teacher, does he not pay a half-shekel temple tax?" He says, "Yes." And after Peter had come into the house, Jesus spoke to him before he could get a word in edgeways, saying, "What do you think, Simon? The kings of the earth, from whom are they accustomed to receive import and export duties and a tax? From their sons, or from those who do not belong to their families?" And Peter, having said, "From those not of their families," Jesus said to him, "So then, the sons are exempt. However, in order that they may not find something in us of which they would disapprove, having proceeded to the sea, throw in a fishhook, and the first fish that comes up seize at once, and having opened its mouth, you will find a shekel. Having taken that, give it at once to them, for me and you." During that hour the disciples came to Jesus, saying, "Who then is greatest in the kingdom of heaven?" And having called to himself a little child, he stood it in their midst, and said, "Assuredly, I am saying to you, unless you reverse your present trend of thought, and become as the little children, in no case shall you enter the kingdom of heaven. Therefore, he who is of such a nature as to humble himself like this little child, esteeming himself small inasmuch as he is so, Thus thinking truly, and because truly, therefore humbly of himself, this person is the greatest in the kingdom of heaven. And whoever shall receive one such little child in my name, me he receives. But whoever causes one of these little ones who believe in me to stumble, it would be to his profit that a millstone were hung about his neck and that he be drowned in the depth of the sea. Woe to the world because of the stumbling blocks, for it is inevitable that stumbling blocks come. But woe to the man through whom the stumbling block comes. Now, assuming that your hand or your foot causes you to stumble, cut it out at once and throw it from you. It is better for you to enter life disabled or lame than having 2 hands or feet to be thrown into the fire which is everlasting. And assuming that your eye causes you to stumble, root it out at once and throw it from you. It is better for you to enter life deprived of 1 eye than having 2 eyes to be thrown into the hell of fire. Be taking heed. Do not begin to underestimate the value of one of these little ones. For I am saying to you, their angels in heaven are always contemplating the face of my Father who is in heaven. What do you think? If there should come into the possession of a certain man 100 sheep, and one of them should be enticed to roam about and go astray, would he not leave the 99 upon the mountain, and having gone out on his way, going to seeking the one that is roaming about? And if it should come to pass that he finds it, assuredly I am saying to you, he rejoices over it more than the 99 that have not been enticed to roam about and go astray. Thus, there is not a desire in the presence of your Father who is in heaven that one of these little ones perish. Moreover, if your brother should commit an act of sin, be going, show him his sin with a view to convicting him of it, and bringing about a confession between you and him alone. If he hears you, you won your brother over. But if he does not hear you, take with you 1 or 2 besides, in order that upon the basis of the mouth of 2 witnesses or 3, every word may be established. And if he is unwilling to hear them, tell the assembly. And if he also is unwilling to hear the assembly, let him be to you as the pagan Gentile and the tax collector. Assuredly, I am saying to you, whatever you forbid on earth shall have already been forbidden in heaven, and whatever you permit on earth shall have already been permitted in heaven. Again, assuredly, I am saying to you, if 2 of you upon the earth are in agreement concerning every matter of which they ask that something be given, it shall become theirs from the presence of my Father who is in heaven. For where there are 2 or 3 who have been joined together in my name, with the result that I am the common object of their faith, there I am in their midst. Then, having come, Peter said to him, Lord, how often shall my brother sin against me, and I shall forgive him? Up to 7 times? Jesus says to him, I do not say to you up to 7 times, but up to 70 times 7. Therefore the kingdom of heaven is likened to a man, a king, who desired to settle accounts with his slaves. And while he was beginning to compute the accounts, one was brought to him who owed him about $12 million. And not having that by which to discharge the debt, the master commanded that he be sold, also the wife and the children and whatever he had, and that the debt be discharged. Then the slave, having fallen upon his knees, was touching the ground with his forehead in an expression of profound reverence before him, saying, Be patient with me, mild and slow in requiring payment, and I will pay back all to you. And being moved with compassion, the master of that slave released him and canceled the debt. But having gone out, that slave found one of his fellow slaves who owed him about $20. And having seized him, he went to strangling him and wringing his neck, saying, Settle up at once, since you are owing me something. Then, having fallen down, his fellow slave kept on begging him, saying, Be patient with me, mild and slow in requiring payment, and I will pay you. However, he was not willing, but having gone off, he threw him into prison until he would pay back that which he was owing. Then, when his fellow slaves had seen the things which had taken place, they were greatly affected by sorrow, and having come, they made entirely clear to their master all the things which took place. Then his master, having called him, says to him, Slave, pernicious one, I canceled for you that entire debt, seeing that you begged me to do so. Ought not you also, in view of the very necessity imposed by these circumstances, to have shown mercy to your fellow slave, just as I also was merciful to you? And having been aroused to the point of a justifiable anger, his master handed him over to the torturers until such time as he would pay back all that he owed him. Thus also my Father who is in heaven will do to you if you do not forgive each one his brother from your hearts. And it came to pass, when Jesus brought to a close these discourses, that he went away from Galilee and came into the borders of Judea across the Jordan. And large crowds followed with him, and he healed them there. And there came to him Pharisees, putting him to the test, and saying, Is it lawful for one to dismiss his wife for every cause? And answering, he said, Have you not read? The Creator from the beginning, a male and a female, he made them, and said, On this account a man shall forsake his father and his mother, and shall be joined to his wife, and they shall be the two one flesh. Insomuch that no longer are they two, but one flesh. Therefore that which God once for all yoked together, let man not be separating. They say to him, Why then did Moses command to give her a bill of divorce and dismiss her? He says to them, Moses, on account of the hardness of your heart, permitted you to dismiss your wives. But from the beginning, it, namely the right of divorce, has not been thus, right down to the present moment, and as a result, it continues to be at variance with the original enactment. Moreover, I am saying to you, whoever dismisses his wife for any other cause than fornication and marries another is committing adultery. His disciples say to him, Since the matter is thus with reference to the man's aforementioned reason in the case of his wife, it is not expedient to marry. And he said to them, Not all receive with the understanding this word, but those to whom it has been given to receive it. For there are those of such a nature as to be eunuchs, who were born thus from the mother's womb. And there are those of such a nature as to have been made eunuchs by men. And there are those of such a nature as to have constituted themselves eunuchs, for the sake of the kingdom of heaven. He who is able to receive this with understanding, let him be receiving it. Then there were brought to him little children, in order that he might lay his hands on them and pray. And the disciples rebuked them. But Jesus said, Permit the children, and stop forbidding them to come to me. For of such as these is the kingdom of heaven. And having laid his hands on them, he departed from that place. And behold, one having come to him said, Teacher, what good thing should I do in order that I might acquire life eternal? And he said to him, Why are you asking me concerning the aforementioned good thing? One there is who is good. But since you are desiring to enter the life, be keeping with a jealous solicitude the commandments. He says to him, What sort of commandments? And Jesus said, You shall not commit murder, you shall not commit adultery, you shall not steal, you shall not bear false witness. Be setting a correct evaluation upon your father and mother, and be treating them with the reverence and love which is their due. And you shall love with a divine and self-sacrificial love your neighbor in the same manner as yourself. The youth says to him, These things, all of them, I took care not to violate and have observed. What is it that I'm still lacking? Jesus said to him, Since you are desiring to be in a state where there is nothing wanting that is necessary to completeness, be going your way. Sell your belongings, and give at once to those who are poor, and you shall have treasure in heaven. And come, be taking with me the same road that I take. But having heard the aforementioned word, the youth went off, being grieved, for he had many possessions. And Jesus said to his disciples, Assuredly I am saying to you, a wealthy man with difficulty shall enter the kingdom of heaven. And again I am saying to you, it is easier for a camel to go through the eye of a sewing needle than for a rich man to enter the kingdom of God. And the disciples, having heard this, were for a time beside themselves with amazement, exceedingly so, saying, Who then is able to be saved? And Jesus, having turned his eyes upon them, and having considered them, said to them, In the presence of men, as men look at this, it is impossible. But in the presence of God, as he looks at this, all things are possible. Then, answering, Peter said to him, Behold, as for us, we abandoned all things once for all, and took the same road with you that you are taking. What then shall there be for us? And Jesus said to them, Assuredly I am saying to you, as for you, you who took the same road with me which I am traveling, at the time when all things shall be restored to their pristine glory, when the Son of Man shall have taken his seat upon the throne of his glory, you yourselves also shall seat yourselves upon 12 thrones, judging the 12 tribes of Israel. And everyone who is of such a nature as to have abandoned houses or brothers or sisters or father or mother or children or farms for the sake of my name shall receive many times as much and shall inherit life eternal. Moreover, many who are first shall be those who are last, and those who are last shall be those who are first. For instance, the kingdom of heaven is like a man, a master of a house, who was of such a nature that he went out early in the morning to hire for himself workers for his vineyard. And having agreed with the workers upon the basis of a denarius for a day, he sent them off into his vineyard to fulfill the task assigned to them. And having gone out about the third hour, he saw others who had taken their stand in the marketplace and who were unemployed. And to them he said, As for you, you also be going into the vineyard, and whatever is fair I will give you. And they went off. And again, having gone out about the 6th and 9th hour, he did the same thing. And about the 11th hour, having gone out, he found others who had taken their stand and were standing there. And he says to them, Why have you stood here the whole day as unemployed men? They say to him, Because as for us, nobody hired us for himself. He says to them, As for you, be also going into the vineyard. Now evening having come, the master of the vineyard says to his manager, Call the workers at once and give them their pay, beginning with the last ones to those who were first. And having come, those who were hired about the 11th hour received a denarius. And having come, those who were the first ones supposed that they would receive more. Yet they themselves also received a denarius. And having received it, they kept discontentedly grumbling and complaining against the master of the house, muttering in a low undertone, saying, Those who were last worked 1 hour, and you made them equal to us, who bore the burden of the day and its scorching heat. But answering one of them, he said, My good friend, I am not treating you unjustly. Did you not agree with me for a denarius? Take that which is yours and be going on your way. Moreover, it is my pleasure to give to this last one, as I also gave to you. Is it not lawful for me to do that which I desire to do with those things which are mine? Or is your eye pernicious, because I, in contradistinction to you, am generous? Thus those who are last shall be those who are the first ones, and those who are the first ones shall be the last ones. Now Jesus, about to be going up to Jerusalem, took the 12 with himself privately. And on the road he said to them, Behold, we are going up to Jerusalem, and the Son of Man shall be delivered up treacherously into the hands of the chief priests and the men learned in the sacred scriptures. And they shall condemn him to death, and they shall deliver him into the hands of the Gentiles to mock and to scourge and to crucify. And on the third day he shall be raised up. Then there came to him the mother of the sons of Zebedee with her sons, falling upon her knees and touching the ground with her forehead in an expression of profound reverence, and begging something from him. And he said to her, What are you desiring? She says to him, Speak with the voice of authority, and cause that these, my 2 sons, may be seated, one on your right hand and one on your left in your kingdom. And Jesus answering said, You too are not knowing what you are asking for yourselves. Are you both able to drink the cup which I alone am about to be drinking? They say to him, We are able. He says to them, My cup you both shall indeed drink. But to be seated on my right hand and on my left, this is not mine to give, but it is for those for whom it has been prepared, and is at present reserved by my Father. And the 10, having heard this, were angrily indignant concerning the 2 brothers. But Jesus, having called them to himself, said, You know that the rulers of the Gentiles lord it over them, and those who are great play the tyrant and domineer over them. It is not thus among you, but whoever among you desires to become great, he shall be your servant. And whoever among you desires to have the position of preeminence, he shall be your slave, just as the Son of Man did not come to be served, but to serve, and to give his life as a ransom in exchange for and instead of many. And as they were proceeding out from Jericho, a large crowd followed with them. And behold, 2 blind men sitting at the side of the road, having heard that Jesus was passing by, cried out with a loud voice, saying, Lord, sympathize with our misery and help us, Son of David. But the crowd charged them sharply that they should be quiet. But they cried out the more, saying, Lord, sympathize with our misery and help us, Son of David. And Jesus, having come to a stop, stood still, called them, and said, What do you desire that I should do for you? They say to him, Lord, that our eyes may be opened. And Jesus, having been moved with compassion, touched their eyes, and immediately They received their sight and followed with him.